If you've ever bet on over 2.5 goals in football, done all your research, looked at stats only for it to be low scoring, then you are not alone. There is a high chance you might have mistakenly bet on some of the worst possible matches for over 2.5 goals. And in this video today, I will show you what these matches are so you can avoid making this mistake in future. The next 10 minutes could change the way you bet on over 2.5 goals forever. So, go put the kettle on, and let's dive right in. The first mistake is betting on first leg knockout matches in major tournaments. This is the most obvious trap in the goals market, yet it catches people out every single season in the Champions League, the Europa League, and even domestic cup semi-finals. What this mistake is looking at the attacking quality of two elite sides and assuming they will produce a shootout, while completely ignoring the incentive structure of a two-legged tie. Why it matters is that first leg matches are often governed by game theory and the fear of conceding. Managers prioritize control over chaos, and the risk appetite of even the most aggressive teams drops dramatically. They know that a 0-0 or a 1-0 result keeps them in the tie for the second leg, whereas losing 3-0 at home is a disaster they cannot recover from. What most bettors do wrong is focusing on the names on the shirts rather than the tactical caution of the situation. For example, you might see two high-scoring sides meet in a promotion playoff or a cup semi-final and assume goals are guaranteed. However, the pressure of the occasion often leads to defensive blocks and very cagey football. How you should approach this correctly is by recognizing that in a first leg scenario, conceding is often viewed as more dangerous than scoring is valuable. If the game is structurally built for control rather than transition chaos, you should simply stand down and wait for the second leg where the urgency is forced to return. And guys, I have to admit it, when I first started out, this is a mistake I used to make myself. You would see a hyped up Champions League tie with some world-class players taking part, and then the match would end up tight and tactical as it was the first leg. These days, I avoid those matches and just concentrate on the second leg when everyone knows what needs to be done to qualify. Now, the second mistake is something that looks like a goal fest on paper, but is often a defensive deadlock, and that is the relegation six-pointer. This happens when two teams near the bottom of the table face each other late in the season. What this mistake represents is the assumption that because both teams typically have poor defensive records and concede a lot of goals normally, they will concede a lot of goals against each other. Why it matters is that when survival is at stake, human behavior changes. Points matter far more than performance, and fear becomes the dominant emotion on the pitch. These matches often feature incredibly low tempo, deep defensive blocks, and very risk-averse substitutions. Let's say you're watching a match between two struggling sides in the Premier League. Most bettors will see that both teams have 0.0 clean sheets in their last 5 games and assume that overs is a banker. However, because neither manager can afford to lose, they set up to be hard to beat. A 1-1 or a 0-0 draw often becomes an acceptable outcome for both parties as the game progresses. What most bettors do wrong is ignoring the shift in motivation. They see the poor league table position and assume it means defensive incompetence, but in a six-pointer, it actually leads to tactical conservatism. How to approach it correctly is to understand that over 2.5 goals requires at least one team to take a significant risk. If the incentive is purely focused on survival and avoiding defeat, the game environment is structurally toxic for a goals bettor. Now, the third one is something most bettors completely overlook because it feels like a safe win, and that is the 2-0 control team fixture. This is a subtle trap that usually involves an elite favourite at home against a much weaker opponent. What this mistake represents is the assumption that a strong team equals a high-scoring game. Why it matters is that some elite teams, particularly under certain tactical managers, specialise in control rather than destruction. They score their first goal, they score their second goal to make it 2-0, and then they effectively shut the game down. A common situation might be watching a top 4 side like Manchester City or a dominant European giant playing a team in the bottom 3. The market assumes a blowout, but the reality is that the favourite often wants to protect their players' legs for a bigger game midweek. They move into a period of passive possession, the tempo drops to nearly 0, and they make substitutions that favour defensive stability over attacking flair. Out of curiosity actually, have you ever found yourself in that position where you've backed overs in a match where the favourite is cruising at 2-0, only to watch 30 minutes of walking pace football where neither side has another shot on target? Let me know in the comments because I'm genuinely curious which of these dead environments you find the most frustrating to watch. How you should approach this correctly is by identifying the difference between a chaos team and a control team. Over 2.5 goals usually requires two teams willing to contribute or one team that is unable to control the chaos. If the favorite is too dominant and the underdog lacks any attacking quality to score a goal themselves, you are relying entirely on the favorite to score three. Once they reach 2-0, their incentive to risk a third goal vanishes and your bet is often left stranded. By the way, guys, if you want to skip all that manual research and find the matches where the environment actually supports a high-scoring game, the Statto app is a brilliant research accelerator. Instead of spending your morning manually checking manager incentives and looking for those specific control red flags across dozens of leagues, you simply press the prompt and let the artificial intelligence do the heavy lifting for you. It automates the entire research process, identifying the genuine value spots where the data suggests a high-tempo shootout rather than a tactical shutdown. It is all about time saving and simplicity, ensuring you stay focused on the trades that actually have a professional edge. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen. This next mistake catches a lot of bettors out because it feels like they're following the smart money, and that is the high-scoring league autopilot. This is counterintuitive for most people. What this mistake is blindly backing over 2.5 goals in leagues like the Bundesliga, the Eredivisie, or the MLS just because they have high scoring averages. Why it matters is that the market is already hyper aware of these league averages, and the bookmakers price them accordingly. You will often see the over goals market priced at 1.45 or 1.60 in these leagues, which implies a 62 to 69% probability. I learned this the hard way during my early years when I was trying to transition into a more disciplined approach. I would see a game in a high-scoring league and think it was a banker because the league averaged 3.2 goals per match, but I was ignoring the fact that my entry price offered zero value. Every time I've ignored this rule and entered a trade based on league averages alone, I've been reminded that variance still exists. And if you're taking a 1.55 price on a 60% hit rate, you're mathematically losing money in the long term. This is where most people slip up, and I was no different before I started prioritizing price over league reputation. How to approach it correctly is to remember that high-scoring leagues don't guarantee an edge, they often remove it. If you're taking a crushed price, you need extreme consistency just to break even. You should only be involved in these games if the specific match data suggests a probability even higher than the bookmaker's aggressive pricing. Professional betting is about beating the price, not just picking a league where goals happen. And finally, the last tip, and honestly, the most impactful insight of the entire video, is to avoid end-of-season dead rubbers. This is the ultimate silent killer of over 2.5 goal bets. What this mistake represents is backing goals in matches where neither team has anything left to play for. You might have two mid-table teams with no European spots at stake and no threat of relegation. Why it matters is that football at the professional level is fueled by urgency and intensity. When that urgency is removed, the pace of the game slows down significantly. Players are less likely to make those high-intensity recovery runs. Managers make early substitutions to give younger players a run out, and the overall competitive bite of the match disappears. A common situation might be a fixture in May where the teams have historical averages that look great for overs. Most bettors look at the data from the previous 8 months and assume the trend will continue, but the motivation has shifted. Without a specific objective, the risk appetite of the players drops. Over 2.5 goals thrives in environments of high urgency where teams must score to achieve a goal. In a dead rubber, a 1-1 draw is a perfectly acceptable way to finish the afternoon and get to the summer break. How you should approach this correctly is by identifying urgency filters. You want to see teams fighting for a title, a European place, or to avoid the drop. If the match has zero consequence for either side, the statistical probability of the game becoming a low-tempo stroll is far higher than the market usually accounts for. Avoiding these dead zone games is one of the fastest ways to improve your long-term ROI in the goals market. And like I said earlier, guys, hours of manual research and trying to track these shifting motivations yourself are no longer necessary if you want to professionalize your approach. Statto dramatically speeds up the process by providing structured betting insights instantly. It handles the heavy lifting of data analysis, using artificial intelligence to scan the globe and identify exactly where the urgency and the price offer a genuine professional advantage. It provides the structured insights you need to stop falling into these structural traps. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen right now to see how the artificial intelligence can accelerate your research and provide a serious upgrade for your football betting process. I really hope this deep dive into the 5 worst matches for over 2.5 goals has shown you that consistency comes from understanding the environment, not just the attacking quality of the teams. When you stop chasing famous names and start avoiding these structural traps, your results will naturally follow. Remember to click that like button if you found this valuable. It tells YouTube to show you more of this kind of content. As always, the learning shouldn't stop here. There is actually another video on the screen right now that I think you'll find very useful if you want to keep building your knowledge and sharpening your edge. Go ahead and click that, and I'll see you over there.